Dr. Ricardo Dal Farra is our guest today, and he is going to be sharing with us his extensive background in working in transdisciplinary practice. He is the personification of being undisciplined in not only his efforts to bring different kinds of people together, cultures together, practices together, but also his ingenuity in making his projects happen in environments where it isn't necessarily particularly easy. I'm looking forward to seeing what motivates him and some of the successes he's had in engaging in these many different parallel realities. So, Ricardo Dal Farra, welcome. I'm excited to talk to you today about transdisciplinary practice and all of the work that you have been doing for a significant amount of years in that area, with particular reference to things like climate change and other issues. Ricardo, we met at ICEIA. We were on a panel together. I remember you saying during that panel that it's important to meet face to face and build relationships over time. We've met face to face, but not in person. So we're building relationships over time virtually, which is part of Awhi World's practice. And part of that today is introducing you to, I guess, a different audience, part of our community, and to learn more about some of the really exciting work you've been doing in the transdisciplinary area, particularly the work you've been doing with the organization, or should we call it regular event, called Balance Unbalance, as well as your work at Concordia University in the workshops and things you're running and courses you're running. Perhaps, Ricardo, if we could start with you introducing yourself and saying a little bit to everybody about your background and where you are working and some of the things you're doing at the moment.
Thank you, Maggie, for the introduction. Yes, I said that usually, I mean, it is different when we meet people face to face, but in this case it's different, and I think it will work for a long time. But it happened to me many times that, I mean, you just met someone just once, and maybe you keep working with these people forever, like 30 years after, you're still feeling like friends, even if you talk from time to time and just online. So it is an interesting world. My background, well, I was born in Argentina many years ago. And basically my background has been very unusual, irregular, to be honest. I mean, I started to study like engineer, but I was doing music. So finally, I couldn't find anything that was fitting what I was trying to do. So I started to create, I mean, to make a very long story short, I started to create some programs, educational programs for high school, universities, etc., that were basically, in some way, proposing what I was trying to do for myself, what I was thinking that was interesting, that was useful, that was going to be a good project, not just for me, but for other people. So in this way, I started to do several projects. Life took me to a number of different things. And even if I didn't have any university degree, I was leading at some point, for example, the development of a national program on what we call multimedia education in the Federal Ministry of Education in Argentina, because nobody had a specific degree on that. So me neither. So I was doing a lot of different things. And after many years, as probably you know, Argentina is not just known because of the Pope and soccer, etc., but also because all the struggles in the economy, usually. So at some point, I was always thought about staying in Argentina, but I also found that I could do a lot of things, not just for Argentina, but for Latin America, living some other places. So for the past 20 years, more or less, I have been living in Montreal, where I work at Concordia University. But really, I'm still doing, I could say almost every day, things related to Latin America in general. So related to the intersection between, first, I could say, between art, science, and technology, sometimes between design, science, and technology, and art. And basically, this was taking me slowly to what we call today transdisciplinarity. I mean, that I think is an utopic perspective, maybe, but I'm doing the best I can towards that direction.
Mm. And Ricardo, one of the things that you spoke about when we first met was a really dynamic and interesting program called Balance Unbalance, which is related to, connected to climate change or areas to do with the environment, but brings together a diverse group of people. And that sounds like it's in that same practice, perhaps an extension or parallel universe of some of the things that you're doing. Can you say more about that program?
Sure. For me, I mean, I'm doing really a lot of different things, but I mean, I work with people from many different places in very different projects that are not related uniquely to the environmental crisis, but really is what I think is more important, urgent, something that maybe I can contribute a small drop in the ocean, but I mean, just try to do it. So, was interesting for me to find. Was more than interesting. Was like a little bit surprising for me coming from Argentina when I started to live in Canada. Was a little bit strange because in Argentina the movement of the pace of news are so fast. You need to read the headlines. I mean, several times a day because everything is changing fast. It's not the same in other societies, but when you think about what you were asking me specifically, well, this is it is related because if you come from a place where the urgencies of the day are not leaving you to see what's going to happen in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, because you need to cover the problems you have today, this afternoon, tomorrow. I mean, you cannot see 50 years ahead. So when you come to other kind of culture societies, well, the people think differently, and maybe they don't care about what's going on today. They think about what's going on in 20 years or 30 years. So I was like feeling like in a dichotomy, a schizophrenic situation where what's going on in this world. I mean, in some places there are similarities, but at the same time, I mean, the thoughts, the perspective, the interest for things like climate change, biodiversity, waste, poverty, etc., the perspectives were in some ways different. So, so this was like almost 15 years ago, and I was chair of the music department at Concordia University. And I said, well, I think that we should do something about it. And then I became with this idea that didn't start in Canada. It started in a university I have been related also for many years in Argentina. The university name is UNTREF. So I decided to put together an international conference in less than 3 months. And you could think, well, this is impossible in other places. But Argentina has a lot of problems, but also has a lot of interesting peculiarities. You can do that. I mean, you can put together a conference, international conference, in less than 3 months, and it worked. You know, people from the government came, engineers, artists, even people were flying from Brazil, from Canada, etc. So people from the US were participating. So, but everything was put together just very fast. So that was the beginning of Balance Unbalance. In reality, the first one was called in Spanish Equilibrio Desequilibrio. That translated is like equilibrium, disequilibrium, but it didn't sound well. So I said, let's make the translation like Balance Unbalance. And from that day on, really the name that is well known all around is Balance Unbalance. Like balance, not and balance, but like balance and balance, right? I mean, like showing the disequilibrium that we have in this world. So really, this was like the beginning of everything. Just one more thing to say, there are a couple of things there. First, that my idea was always to bring together people with different thoughts about this, because when we talk about the environmental crisis, the idea was not, just to talk to engineers or engineer specialists on this, or lawyers or economists. What can we do? I would say that everything started when I was asking someone in a big university in a very high position, saying something like, well, what can the artist do with this problematic? So I was in Argentina asking these kind of things to someone very knowledgeable about the topic. And so I thought, well, he's going to tell me, okay, Ricardo, go back to your sounds, because I'm a musician, go back to your sound, do your ping pong, because I'm doing computer music. And he said the contrary. He said, well, the people who are that can do something are the artists, because the artist has the power to reach the people and to make the people to reflect and to react, etc. So for me, it was a surprise. I didn't trust that very much, but I said, let's try. And after the first Balance Unbalance, the other thing I wanted to comment before to move on is that, at the end of the conference, I said, well, that was very interesting. I learned a lot. I think other people learned things, but we were, I think the expression in English is like preaching to the converted.
Mm.
So, and I said, well, this is not okay. I don't want to talk about this kind of thing to the people who already understand the problem. So we need to do something different. So I think that basically the idea is that different from other conferences or from other activities is that with Balance Unbalance, we have a common problem, and the common problem is the environmental crisis. So it doesn't matter if you're a radio producer, if you're an artist, if you're a designer, if you're a scientist, if you're a technology expert on this or that. You can come from any place, from any perspective, but we all share the same problem. So that was the beginning, really. And I will stop. Yeah.
What successes do you think have come from the regular Balance Unbalance events that you've held, because you've held them regularly from what I've seen over the last 15 years? What do you think the core successes have been, or outcomes of that? Let's call it impacts even.
Yes. First, maybe it looked like silly or not important, but the first point was for me that I was learning a lot. So I thought, I need to be convinced that this is working. If I'm not convinced this is useful, well, this is just to feed my ego. And that was not the idea. So for me, the success, there were several things. First, that, for example, people that I respect a lot from all over the world were supporting me, and people that, to get 5 minutes from their times is very hard. They were investing their time, knowledge, contact, etc., to participate, to contribute, to see how this could help in some way. So that for me was very, very inspiring, I would say. And I remember when we did the second Balance Unbalance, I couldn't get almost any financial support. We didn't have any money, almost no money. Like the resources were almost nothing. We did it at Concordia University. So I was using the resources of the university, but really we didn't have money to pay people to come, etc., etc. But suddenly, a lot of people came from all around the world, from Australia, from Sweden, from France, from Mexico, from Brazil. So it was like very, very impressive, the kind of support we were receiving, because all these people were coming with very different profiles, and they were meeting, and they were, yes, bringing their own projects to show what they were doing, but also meeting people that I think that was helping to change not their perspective, but their possibilities. Just as an example, I'm always bringing this as an example because for me it was very clear. In the Balance Unbalance in 2015, we did it in Arizona State University, the US. And I remember that Roger Malina, astrophysicist, former director of the Leonardo Journal, from the, published by MIT Press, etc., etc. I mean, Leonardo is like the main publication of art, science, and technology. And he was able to come, if I remember well, just one day. So he came. And also another person who came was Pablo Suarez. Pablo Suarez was one of the associate directors of the Red Cross Climate Center. So people with huge networks, people that were moving all around the world, at the same time, networks that usually were parallel. These networks were not intersecting. So if you tell me for me what was a success, I would share this specifically. That yes, everyone was presenting, papers, panels, artworks, performances. People were developing new projects, but during lunchtime, I called Pablo and I said, Pablo, grab a sandwich. Roger, grab a sandwich. I'm talking about Roger Malina and Pablo Suarez, the people I just introduced. And I said, hey, I need to introduce each other. Just sit and talk. That was success because I was being able to bring people together from very different places with different possibilities, huge networks, huge knowledge. Was very interesting. And they spent the time we had, like an hour, the three of us. I almost didn't talk. I wanted them to talk and see how they could find point of contact, because I thought, well, it's not like these are not any people. These are people that can make changes in a large scale. So to put these people in contact for me is already like a very successful point. And really, the Red Cross Climate Center, through Pablo or other people, has been participating in many of the activities of Balance Unbalance. Roger Malina has been participating a lot of times in Balance Unbalance. This was leading the Leonardo Journal, where it is not it's not easy to publish there. We have been publishing a lot of things that came out from Balance Unbalance. More than 70 pages on Leonardo has been coming directly from Balance Unbalance presentation. So, but I mean, the goal is not to publish papers. That needs to be clear. I mean, the papers are just a way of disseminating things, but it's not a measure of success. For me, success was those kind of meetings that I was mentioning before.
Mm. And one of the things you hinted at earlier, which I thought was very interesting, is you spoke about in Argentina, the news is very fast. Well, at the time you were discussing it, things are changing constantly. It's like a frame of the world or reality where there's a lot of constant change or dynamism, yeah? And other cultures don't have that same, necessarily have that same dynamism. And one of the things that comes to me from World's experience is that we talk about transdisciplinary practice, but actually what it is often an intercultural or interreality experience where you're facilitating people or bringing people together who come from quite different ways of seeing the world. And I'm wondering, as part of that, what are the things that you've noticed are some of the challenges or opportunities of those different worldviews coming together? That for me is the exciting part, I think.
Yes. Well, I could see through the years. I mean, I'm still doing project with Roger Malina, and one of the projects we are doing now has to do with cyber villages. We call it cyber villages. It's like smart cities, but in a smaller scale. And what this means, and we learned a lot exploring these kind of things about cultural intelligence and how we have a small group, but it is different generations, different backgrounds, different countries. So all these kind of intersections or differences are making us, yes, think differently, but at the same time to learn a lot of things. So if we go back to balance and balance, I mean, the idea of balance and balance is that, yes, people are coming from different places, but I mean, we try to encourage this idea to go beyond disciplines. I mean, we don't care about the disciplines, even if there are people with expertise in different fields. But at some point, we go beyond this because it is fantastic when you find that the astrophysicist can talk to an expert in geography and can talk to a performer that can talk to someone coming from theater that is talking to someone who's coming from design thinking, etc., etc. And there are no barriers. There are no problems in trying to work together, focusing on specific problems like the environmental issues. So I think that in that sense, the experience has been very positive because that was the goal, bringing people expertise and backgrounds and thoughts from very different places so they can work together. And because, as I said before, I mean, we are not going to find a solution for the problem we have in general, the current problem, complex problem, etc., coming from just one field. That if we study economics, we are going to solve the poverty in the world. I mean, it is much more complex than this. So it is a mix of things. So even I remember that was very interesting because once in Balance Unbalance, we have someone from a very big company. You know, we see many times like, well, this person is coming from a big company. He has a very high position in the company. He should be very smart, but at the same time, we could see like companies are part of the problem sometimes. And the learning, the persons was 3 days, the 3 days of the Balance Unbalance, stay there, and was fantastic, the kind of things we learned. I mean, this person was negotiating, for example, like water resources in different countries, and he was explaining how these resources were leading to wars that some of the wars we have been living with in the world in the past 10, 15, 20 years. And he was explaining how he was negotiating certain things that, yes, he was linked to a company, but I mean, certain kind of things that we listened to on the news were not exactly the reasons, the basic primary reasons that were triggering these wars. So we were listening to someone coming from a company with our own prejudices, like we all have, but the result was that, I mean, we really need to be able to be open to listen what other people has to say, if we agree or if we do not agree, because that's the only way of trying to understand what's going on, and maybe to find here and there some little help to start fixing some of the many issues we face. So that's what I'm doing also in my university at different scales.
Can you say more about the education program that you're running at Concordia? Because you're working with musicians, but you're also kind of bringing in a cross-disciplinary aspect, is my understanding.
Yes. I between other things, I'm running a class.
Many different things. You're a man of many different things.
Yes, it's true. Well, at Concordia, I'm in the music department, so I need to teach music from time to time. But I have like a class that is called, it took me many years to get the class approved, to be honest. It is called Transdisciplinary Creation and Performance. I think that transdisciplinarity is sometimes like maybe it's a vision too utopic, but I mean that we tend to go into that direction. In this case, I don't think that we really are able to reach a transdisciplinarity perspective, but students are starting to understand it more and more and more. I mean, just to give an example, this class, as I said, is for composers and performers. And we say, well, what this has to do with anything? Well, the first part of the class, usually I'm asking people coming from different fields to talk to the students. For example, could come the president of the International Law Association of Canada, someone specialist in neurobiology, a truck driver, a magician, a space scientist, anyone could come. And you think, well, this is a little bit insane. Well, maybe it is. At the beginning, the students, they don't understand what's going on. Yes. Then, and I'm asking, many of the people coming, they usually are, maybe as a secondary profile, we could say they are also making some art, painting or music. But I'm asking them, don't talk about art, don't talk about music. But this is a music class. Well, my idea is that we are doing, I mean, of course, I'm oversimplifying what I'm going to say, but I mean, the idea is that in some fields, especially, we are, and in some societies, we are very much encapsulated with a certain vision or inside our bubble of the profession. And we don't see, and we don't care many times how other people think about the world. That could be great if the world would be functioning fantastically well, but it's not the case. We have a lot of problems. So the idea is that after the students are receiving these people talking about different things and they can pose questions, etc., the idea is that they could see how other people understand the world, how all this works. So after some classes and presentations, etc., they need to start working in teams. So usually when you compose, you don't compose with a group of people, you compose alone. Well, not in this case. You need to work together, and they can do their own groups, etc. And they need to work at least with one person external to the class that should come from outside, not from the music world and not from the art world. Could be anyone. Understanding views, perspective, values, methodologies, techniques, how these people make their work. Are these ideas fitting into the art world or not? So they start to question themselves the way they are doing things. And I'm asking them to work in any field. So they discuss with me the kind of field they are interested in exploring, etc., etc. But at some point, after some months, it takes a while, but they start to think differently. And just as a measure of success of this, usually after they finish, it's one term. After they finish the term, in their survey about the class, some people like it very much, some people they don't like it. Okay, you think, well, that's not good. But it is, because many months after, I received messages from the students saying, Ricardo, now I understand. Yes, because it took me 6 months to understand this and this and that, or it took me a year. But now I understand that. I mean, how can we do things without thinking in a transdisciplinary way? I mean, trying to see how these different people understand the world, etc., etc. So I'm happy I finally understood, why you were doing certain things in the class and why we were doing certain things. And really, I think that was really fundamental from now on. And just to add, sorry if my answers are too long, but I'm organizing sometimes field schools with Concordia students that going to Mexico or going to Colombia. And it is a very different reality, very different reality. It is not better or worse, but it is different. The timing, the interest, the perspective that the people have before to go to these places and what they learn in maybe 1 week or 10 days in Mexico or Colombia, it is amazing, because I can do things that I cannot do in Canada. So I can put a pressure on the students much more closer to what I call real life. So after that, in 1 week, many of the students are writing, oh my God, I mean, I have been learning in 10 days more than I'm regularly learning in 1 semester.
Mm.
Well, that's what, as professors, is what we want. I mean, to make an impact. So that's an impact. And the students are coming back saying, oh, yes, now I understand why we were doing this or that in the class. I mean, in a regular class in Montreal. So, yes, there was a reason. It was not random action. So I think that's really good. I enjoy that very much.
You've mentioned a couple of times about the idea that transdisciplinarity is utopic, like it's kind of a utopia that we may or may not ever reach. But it sounds like you're actually, in your various actions, very much working in that area, especially in this theme of bringing networks or different kinds of people together, or bringing people to different places they haven't been before, so that they can expand their worldview. They can expand the possibilities and options they have available. So, but tell me more about this this comment. Oh, it's probably a bit utopic. What is that, do you think?
Why I think that? Why I think it is utopic? Maybe because I'm never happy enough with the things I'm doing. I always want to do more. I don't feel that I'm doing enough, so I'm always trying to push the boundaries, honestly. Yes, I think that, you know, we make contributions. I think that it is positive, these kind of things, with my students in a smaller scale, or when I was bringing together, I'm very grateful that many people I admire, as I said before, are coming and participating and devoting time to actions we are doing with Balance Unbalance or related things. So, but I feel that the challenges are so huge that I always feel that what I can do is like less than a drop in the ocean. So yes, we do a lot of things, but I mean, I need to learn much more, and I need to convince much more of people about thinking sometimes beyond certain boundaries. And I think that music, art in general, but music in particular, we have some examples about we don't have the certain restrictions or limitations or the way we need to act in what we call technology or what we call science, etc. So we have certain level of freedom that we don't have in other fields. So when you try to intersect all these boundaries, sometimes very strong boundaries, very strong limits, but when you're a musician or an artist, I mean, it's like you feel the freedom of doing certain things, and the people to some point will allow you to have that freedom. And then it is fantastic because you find that people is people. Yes, we put the label of scientist or technology experts on this or that, and designer and artist or musician. Yes, but we have differences, of course. But there are also a lot of common points. So my interest is trying to find the common points, but not forgetting the differences, because we need to live with that. I mean, someone from, I don't know, from China think differently, or it's a generalization, of course, but I mean, in principle, as a society or as a culture, someone from China, someone from Senegal, someone from France or from Colombia think differently about a number of things, or their approach will be probably, in principle, different. But at the same time, we were discussing this the other day, I mean, this idea of different generations, so I think that those kind of things are very interesting, and each day I'm learning, really. I mean, I'm teaching and I'm bringing people together, but there are so many cases that for me were interesting. I mean, I would like to have many more resources to invest all my time in doing things related to balance and balance. But even during the pandemic, when we stopped to do like large events and we started to do things more or hybrid, or of course, like everyone else, online, it was very interesting because I was putting together maybe on a round table. There was the vice president of a university in Colombia. In one of the actions was Paulo Suarez that I was mentioning before, Roger that I was mentioning before, Leah Barkley that from Australia, that she's a sound artist. Okay, that for example one little think tank. Okay, and suddenly during the presentation of Leah, she's an artist, and she was explaining about how she was making recording of certain things, like with some insects or something like that. I don't remember quite well now. And after we finished, Pablo said from the Red Cross Climate Center, he said, "Oh, I want to keep in contact with Leah, because I mean, we have been trying to do this for years and we didn't find the way of solving this. So we are interested in how she's solving this." And yes, you could say this is a little bit of serendipity, you know, but at the end, my conclusion will be maybe because I have this mix of scientists and artists. If it works, it works. So I don't care if we call it serendipity or if I have a strong methodology for developing this kind of thing. What I see is results with people who has access to make changes at some level in the world. So I keep pushing things in that way.
As a final question, Ricardo, because I'm thinking about it myself, what do you think underneath in you drives you to have this as your passion and the thing that you're doing? Is it something to do with reconciliation of the parts of yourself? Is it an underlying philosophy or spiritual practice? Is it something in your background? Where does this passion for this practice you have come from, do you think?
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure, but my father was Italian. He was applying to after the Second War. He was fighting in the war starting when he was 14. Everything was difficult for him. He was applying to visas in 3 countries, Australia, Canada, and Argentina. First visa that appeared was Argentina, so he went to Argentina. Was not easy for him. He was an immigrant, etc., etc. The life of an immigrant in general is not easy. So I think that we had a lot of differences with my father. It used to happen. But I mean, if there is something like I learned, is like the effort in trying to solve things and to go for what you think you should do. I cannot tell you, but I mean, I have several projects I have been doing. Like in Argentina, we were far. Today is different. We have internet and etc. You know, it's very different. But Argentina used to be really far. It still is, but it was farther than today. So because of the economy, because of the geography, etc., to develop my international profile as a musician, etc., was always difficult. It was always very difficult. But I put energy, I invested, I was asking loans for money to go here or there to learn this or that. So I was always passionate and I was always focusing on projects, not on career, honestly. I mean, for me, I did like the largest electroacoustic music archive of Latin American composers, working 30 years on that. I mean, it's insane. This should be done by an institution. But I thought this was going to be lost. And I thought someone needs to do it. So I need to do it. And I just spent an unbelievable amount of time and effort on this. And at some point, I was keeping track of the past in this archive or collection, really. So I was putting a lot of energy on this. And at some point, I said, yes, I'm taking care of the past of a lot of works and a lot of people. And suddenly, I became more aware of the needs related to present and future because of the environmental issues. So I became more and more interested, and I went from keeping track of the past to helping to build better future. I know it is ambitious. It sounds like very pompous, but I mean, I think we should all do something, a little bit, large, whatever. But it scares me when I'm talking to people in any place, in Canada, in Colombia, in Argentina, in Brazil, France, or wherever, when they think that, well, nothing happens. Technology is going to fix all these problems we have with climate change, etc. Like if someone magically is going to solve our problems. Yes, I will call someone who can solve my problems. But I mean, it takes a lot of effort to solve problems. Usually are very transdisciplinary problems, our own problems too. So I think that for me was always like a driving force trying to solve problems. I mean, just one more thing on that sense. When I was directing this federal program in the Federal Ministry of Education of Argentina, the only thing I had was secondary school degree. I didn't have any university degree or anything. So, I mean, can you imagine? I was talking to a lot of people with a lot of degrees, etc., etc. So it took me many years to get my degree finally in the university, but I didn't care. I was pushing because I always thought that what I was doing was what I should do. Maybe it was silly, too innocent, probably, but up to some point, I think it helped. Yeah. Okay.
Ricardo, thank you for your time today. For those who are listening or watching, we have links on our website so that you can learn more about Ricardo's work. And we look forward to seeing what evolves in terms of working between us in terms of Afi World and the many different projects that you are doing at the present time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for the invitation, for your interest in these activities. I really appreciate it.